Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories and conversations. I'm Somna Sambo. In the past decade, the term African feminism has become part of more mainstream conversations. Although African women have been advocating for equal rights for centuries, the rise of social media is now allowing African women to share their perspectives with a wider audience. In the last few years, African women have been organizing for social change under a feminist banner in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Namibia, and South Africa. Much debate has been had about the relevance of this term and if it will actually bring people together or cause further divides. The biggest point of argument seems to come from what the term African feminism actually means and if this term can be applied to an African context.
Since feminism was un-African, I decided I would now call myself a happy African feminist. At some point, I was a happy African feminist who does not hate men and who likes lip gloss and who wears high heels for herself but not for men. Of course, a lot of this was tongue-in-cheek, but that word feminist is so heavy with baggage, negative baggage. You hate men, you hate bras, you hate African culture, that sort of thing. Now, here's a story from my childhood. When I was in primary school, my teacher said at the beginning of term that she would give the class a test, and whoever got the highest score would be the class monitor. Now, class monitor was a big deal. If you were a class monitor, you got to write down the names of noisemakers, which was heady enough power on its own. But my teacher would also give you a cane to hold in your hand while you walked around and patrolled the class for noisemakers. Now, of course, you were not actually allowed to use the cane. But it was an exciting prospect for the 9-year-old me. I very much wanted to be the class monitor, and I got the highest score on the test. Then, to my surprise, my teacher said that the monitor had to be a boy. She had forgotten to make that clear earlier because she assumed it was obvious. A boy had the second highest score on the test, and he would be monitor. Now, what was even more interesting about this is that the boy was a sweet, gentle soul who had no interest in patrolling the class with a cane, while I was full of ambition to do so. But I was female, and he was male, and so he became the class monitor.
All right, I'm now being joined on the line from Cotonou by the multi-award-winning Afro-political feminist Judicaelle Irakoze, and here in the studio by Obianuju, Iloanya, a gender equality advocate and social justice campaigner. Well, good to have you. Let's start with you before I go to her. I mean, it's been a very controversial time. Whenever you throw up that word feminism or you're a feminist, I mean, it provokes lots of debate. Yeah. How do you feel when that debate goes on sometimes to become provocative?
I am very much inclined to make it as provocative as possible. I identify as a feminist, and no matter how uncomfortable it makes people feel, I do not feel pressure to say I am not a feminist or to define my feminism or put boards and explain my feminism. I'm simply a feminist, and if it is not something you're comfortable with, I'm very sorry, but there's nothing we can do about it.
Just take us through the world of being a feminist. What exactly does it mean? Because that has been very controversial in definition itself.
I think that there is no controversy with what being a feminist is. Being a feminist is being a woman who understands that it's important for us to have an equal world, a world where everybody is treated equally regardless of their gender, and that is very important. You find out that in the vast majority of times, women are treated differently in so many ways, and it is wrong because there is no reason why we should be treated differently. The only difference between women and men might be biological differences, which of course there are different conversations about it now. But beyond that, there is no reason why socially, economically, and otherwise women should be treated differently. So when people have problems or reasons to say, well, why are you a feminist? Is it important to be a feminist? Especially in an African context, I feel like they are being hypocritical. They refuse to look at the like at the realities of being an African woman.
Touch.
Yeah, of being an
Right,
African
very
woman,
interesting.
and why it is important to be a feminist. Yes.
All right. Well, I will just have to look at Judicaelle at the moment, and it's been very interesting having this conversation with her here, and she's pandering to the thoughts of gender equality and feminism. When you see these two words being misconstrued sometimes, what does that really mean, actually?
I think when you use the internet, you can find the different meaning of the word feminism and what it means. But I'm an African woman, so I will speak from an African feminist perspective. I think feminism, in simpler words, is a set of political strategies that allow us to create a world where women are safe, are living dignified lives, and are economically, socially, and politically liberated. Now, African feminism is feminism that centers the lives of African women in their diversity and in their multiple ways of existing across the continent. So now you spoke about the negative connotation that goes with feminism. And I think that that's something that isn't only about feminism. That has always happened with any movement that comes to tackle the existing power. What is different about feminism is that we exist in a culture where women are not used to be loud in terms of resisting, in terms of being at the forefront of movements, loud in terms of, challenging the patriarchal settings of women just being behind doors. So when feminism started becoming a way of defining different women's movements, it started becoming a way of saying, oh, we have a men-hating movement, because women were able to name and say, our oppression is rooted in men's power. So for us to be free, men need to actually sit with themselves and, address on ways they are holding us back, addressing ways they are oppressing us. So, and that has been translated in, oh, they hate men, which is common when the oppressed is speaking out. The oppressor is always like, oh, you are coming for me now. It's very normal in different ways that oppression exists all over the world.
So should we now say that because a lot of young women especially are getting more economic opportunities, it gives them the room to want to identify as feminists, or it's just because they are actually angling for some political rights that makes them want to identify as feminists?
So I'm gonna be honest with you. I think whenever a person identifies themselves a feminist, I think it's always a personal journey or a personal story. But now let's talk about the political context of what is happening on the African continent now. On the African continent, from Nigeria to Kenya to South Africa to Cameroon, there have been a lot of uprising of women at the forefront of movement. And that isn't something new, by the way, because women have always been part of liberation movements. And women being part of the liberation movement all across the continent, when women were fighting during decolonization, women were fighting during independence of their countries, women are fighting now. That has always been constant. But what's happening currently is that because of how feminism has been normalized as a concept, as a political ideas, as also a way of living, people are identifying themselves with it. Feminism becoming that safe space of saying, oh, I believe in women's rights. I believe in women having access to full human rights. So I'm a feminist. Yeah, cool. Let me be a feminist. And to be honest, as an organizer, I'm happy with it. I'm happy that everybody feels like, oh, I can take the word feminist and, make it my identity. Now, we need to talk about the work that comes when you identify yourself as a feminist. It's one thing to say you are a feminist. It's another thing to live a life and actions that actually prove you are a feminist. So now the question is, what is being a feminist on a personal level, besides the community level of being a feminist? What is you as an individual claiming to be an African feminist are experiencing, or what are the lived experiences you are carrying to carry that particular identity?
Very interesting, and I'll come back to you here. It's always been a big challenge for a lot of young women identifying as feminists because they feel, a lot of mental torture within our society when they identify as that. First of all, from the home, the parents will be like, what are you trying to say? Does it mean you don't want to get married? You don't want a man beside you? Or is it because you're already having better economic opportunities? That's why you feel you should all be alone. And I want to ask you this. Does identifying as a feminist actually mean being alone, separate from a man, or it means that you could actually continue with this everyday life and then with the target of liberating women?
I think that you've answered this question already, and Judicaelle has also done justice to that. I think that feminism is a personal journey, and if you decide not to align yourself with men in your feminist journey, that's very much valid, and I support that. But
within
within an African context, yes.
And you think the family system will be okay with that?
But you find out that the family system is not okay with men deciding not to get married for a long while, of men being wayward and being as free as they want to. Why is the family context, the family institution worried about what women decide to do, adult women? It is their choice to decide not to get married or to get married. But that's not the conversation. The conversation is, why do women want to be a feminist? Why is feminism more important in an African society?
Yeah, especially in modern society.
In modern society.
So the thinking is that because a lot of women are having better economic opportunities now than their parents, it's giving them opportunities to live a city life that, promotes that feminist agenda.
Feminism is not a city life, and that's one thing that you have to understand. Because there are
lots of people in the hinterlands who don't identify as feminists.
Because they do not say I am a feminist does not mean that their behavior and their actions do not speak to the feminist ways of life, right? So it's important for you to understand and not try to eliminate or trivialize their impact on the feminist movement. But also it's important to understand that economic power is also a very key power when you are demanding for equal treatment and dignity, because a lot of time people will look down on you when you do not have that economic power. So yes, you might say, well, because they have economic power, that's why they are speaking out. But it is not just because of their economic power. That's not just the reason why they speak out. They speak out because women deserve the dignity of being humans themselves and being treated as humans. And it's important for all of us to understand this in our conversations when it relates to feminism. It is not a cosmetic thing that you pick up because you are living in an urban area, or because you're not living in the hinterlands, or because you feel that you have more economic power than your parents. More often than not, we do not even have more economic power than our parents. We are more aware of the indignity of our life, and that's why we are seeking.
Very interesting conversation we are having indeed. And when we come back, we'll talk about superstars being controversial. About all these feminist movements. Some saying they are part of it, some saying they are not part of it. Well, you're still watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead, including we continue our chat on African feminism and its impact on social movements across Africa and in the world. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. Social media has been a tool for African feminists to bring conversations about equity to the mainstream while working to create meaningful change in their communities. Activists have been able to connect shared struggles and build solidarity, which has launched new ways of political strategizing across the globe. But every great movement has its contradictions, and as the African feminist movement grows, many are calling for a politic that honors and respects the nuances of the many communities involved. So what are these nuances, and what exactly does the movement need to consider? Well, for more on this, I'm joined by the multi-award-winning Afro-political feminist Judicaelle Irakoze and gender equality advocate and social justice campaigner Obianuju Iloanya. And I'll turn to you, Judicaelle. It's an interesting conversation sometimes on social media when you see this issue of feminism being mentioned, and then it divides and polarizes the conversation. Everyone is having an issue here and there and having all sorts of opinion. I just want to read this to you from Tiwa Savage, who has said in an interview earlier, I don't think that that's how God created us, especially in the household anyway. So I think as females, when we realize that, we can be strong in our career and stuff. But when we are home, We have to realize that the man is the head of the house. Well, Nigerian pop singer Tiwa Savage said this, and she was almost torn apart on social media. Let's have your contributions on that, especially for married couples who have to face this big challenge of who is the head of the house and all of that.
First of all, I'm a big fan of Tiwa. I love her music, but I'm going to disagree a lot. And I think I agree a lot with comments that she makes about women and their lived experiences. I feel like she's wrong. But her comments are the mainstreamed comments, rooted in Christian beliefs, also rooted in cultural beliefs. And I think for me, we need to think about what we believe in as something that can change over the years. We once existed in a world where it was okay for a 12-year-old to be married. Now we are existing in a world where it's not okay. We once existed in a world where it was okay to sell people as slaves, where slavery was the normal way of life, where people believed it's okay to sell people, and the Bible justified it. Now, 100 years later, it's not okay to do it. So we need to constantly, as human beings, question the way we live. I think that's why if we involve God, give us the intelligence to think. Because when you speak about this whole man is the head, in a family where the man is abusing a woman and she has to stay in that abuse until she's killed because she wants to make the head happy, sometimes we need to really question some of the beliefs that sustain our ways of living, because it's those particular beliefs that have contributed to domestic violence. It's those particular beliefs that have had many women stay in abusive relationships, stay with abusive partners, or make the decision to stay in unhappy homes because of the belief of something like what Tiwa is saying. Now, let's talk about the concept of the head, because that concept is also very wrong. Because it's a couple or a marriage, a corporate. Why does it have to be a head in a situationship of two people? Why does it have to be the one who's ruling and the other one who's being ruled on when it's just two people? Is it a corporation? Is it a non-profit? Is it a government? Is it the government of Nigeria? Like, you gotta have to some sense in some of these things some of these topics that we carry on. Now, I want to bring it back to African feminists. One of the things we will be able to challenge the ways of thinking, including those of Tiwa, is for people to have disagreements. You understand? We must be able to challenge it. When we will be all agreeing, two things will be happening. One, we would have achieved an equal world, or people will be comfortable with the oppression and there will be nothing going on. So we must always have contradiction. We must always have disagreement, because that is part of the work that we're doing, to create a space where people are disagreeing. Some saying no, some others saying, oh, this is...
All right, very quickly, Judicaelle, very quickly, how do you think the social media has helped to increase the voices of feminists and build them into a movement that's helping to fight for political rights?
So social media has made us realize two things: that women don't exist in vacuums, that women are the impoverished, that women are part of the LGBTQ community, that women are the one going through economic crisis. So social media has made us realize that actually women aren't just fighting for their rights on an individual level. Women are fighting for everybody's rights. Look at the Endsars. Women were in the front against police brutality because women were also going through police brutality. Look at the riots in Cameroon against the taking over of the Anglophone crisis. Women were in the front of all of it. So social media has made us realize that actually women are at the forefront, and feminism may be the only political strategy that will give us a better world for all, because women are part of these intersections of life. I think another thing that social media has done that I'm really grateful of, we all are learning from each other. I'm in Cotonou right now. Abortion just became legal, which means many other African countries are going to learn on how we made that happen. Then Nigeria has been teaching us a lot when it comes to organizing for the police brutality. Cameroon has been teaching us a lot. So it's that connection we have from the social media that, oh, we are all together. We are learning from each other. Nothing is happening.
Let me just bring in Obi here. I mean, it's been interesting hearing that conversation. And I just want you to talk about that, how social media has helped women to find their voices, especially feminists, in expressing their views socio-politically, and then helping to drive a new narrative that women should not be, trashed or pulled down whenever they want to have a say politically.
I think that social media has helped to amplify the voice. Women have always had the voice. Women have always spoken out and agitated for things, advocated for the important things, social, cultural, political things. Women have been at the forefront, starting from way back in Nigeria, from the 1929 about women riots to Fumilayo Ransom Kuti with their Abeokuta Women Union, down to the Endsars protests. Women have actually been advocating, but what the social media had done is that it amplified our voice. It made it a lot louder for people to even listen to us, because it stops you from going. You listen and you engage. Even when you disagree, it is very good that you disagree, because what it means is that you are listening, you are engaging on what we are saying, you are finding faults with it, and you're learning lessons from it.
But when you hear the older generation say you make lots of noise on social media
and
it doesn't have much impact on real life, what do you make of that? Because it's at the heart of the Endsars protests.
But then you see that we have made a lot of impact. Look at Benin, for example. When the Republic, they legalized abortion. Look at the Endsars protest. It was literally carried by women. The Feminist Coalition, Rino Douala in Lagos, Etinosa in Abuja, Tosin Adeniji in Abuja. Like, a lot of women were at the forefront of it, giving their lives, literally making that particular impact. What it showed is that women can organize. Women are good leaders. Women do not need to be props at the back.
Very interesting.
So what social media had done is amplify the voices of women and show their work.
Quickly, before we end this conversation, I just have 120 seconds left. I just want to ask you, what has been your biggest challenge while identifying as a feminist? Quickly, in 60 seconds.
I think my biggest challenge while identifying as a feminist is people saying you would be much better if you are a man. I find it very insulting, because I am already great as a woman. I am doing a lot as a woman. I do not need to be a man to achieve a lot. And that was also why I had issues when Aisha Yusufu, when her picture came out during the Endsars, and a guy said, "Wow, that would be a great man." I had issues with that. We need to stop.
Unfortunately, we just have to hear Judicaelle's contribution before I let her go. What's been your biggest challenge while identifying as a feminist?
It's been always having to tell people that there's so much that is being done by women that people don't know, because as you said, social media helped amplified a lot. But there's a lot of organizing that women are doing that people don't know, and I do grassroots work. So to always tell people, don't worry. If you see in the news that a young woman has been raped, trust me, there are women already on that particular case. So to always remind people that women are not just out there making noise. We are actually doing so much more that they are now aware of.
All right, very interesting indeed. Judicaelle joining us from Cotonou, from Benin Republic, and we've had Obianuju here joining us to take a critical look at the word feminism and how that's contributing to new voices and then new innovations within the African political space, especially for women who are fighting for their rights. Well, that's how it's been for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thank you for watching. I'm Somna Sambo.